Morrison? Here. Seifert?
Here.
Green.
Here.
In our board work, we are ever mindful of the mission of School District 15, which is to produce world-class learners by building a connected learning community. Moving on to the pledge.
This evening, the pledge will be led by students from the TJ Rocks Club, and Principal Larry Sassel will come up and introduce the kids and show us a quick video about their club.
Thank you, Board of Ed and Dr. Thompson, for letting Thomas Jefferson be here today. Like Dr. Thompson said, we have the TJ Rocks Club that is going to do the Pledge of Allegiance. So I'd like to have our sponsors, Mrs. Pechoric and Mrs. Wilson, come up with our students, and Mrs. Riemann, the assistant principal, will follow them up. TJ Rocks is a group of students from all different grades who each month produce a video highlighting the wonderful activities that go on at Thomas Jefferson. I'll have the teachers introduce them, the students, and then we will show the video. This is just a sampling of some of our students. They're all leading busy lives, so they all couldn't make it. So I'll have Mrs. Wilson, if you want to introduce, and Mrs. Pechoric, and then we'll show the video.
Like Mr. Sasso said, we invite 2 students from every classroom to participate in our club because we know that things are happening all over the school and we want to know about them and highlight them. So this is Megan Iwanio and Bennett Ash, Vandana Singh,
Maya Planiki, Samara Arsmendi, Emily Pinto, Amber Chandra, and Megan.
So this is our January video that we started the new calendar year off with.
My goal is
My goal is to be the first one in here.
my goal is to have fun at teaching. My goal for the new year is to study more and get good grades.
My goal is to help students, teachers, administrators, and parents in any way I can to make their stay here at TJ a happy one.
My goal at TJ is to be the best student I can possibly be. My goal is to read 500 books. Win the spot shot tournament. My goal is to be a better person.
Hi, TJ. My goal for 2016 is to read more books and cook more meals for my family at home.
Do more snowboarding trips on our
Be the best teacher I can possibly be and to help students be the best students they can be.
My goal is to be
My goal for 2016 is to get 8 hours of sleep each night.
This year is for my soccer team to win state championships.
My goal is to become a better cook.
Is to enter the reading contest at my library.
My goal is to speak Italian.
My goal is to be better at making soccer goals.
And my goal for 2016 is to get healthy. So I want to exercise and eat healthy for the whole year.
My goal is to get smarter and be a better student.
My goal for my New Year's resolution is to read more books.
To get a medal for spot. My goal is to make lots of scores in soccer. My goal is to have fun with friends.
My goal is to not go back to the street.
For New Year's Eve is to ride my bicycle. My New Year's resolution is to keep my room clean. My goal is to have the best time at TJ ever. My goal is to make new friends. I'll be your friends.
My goal is to make Thomas Jefferson the best school ever.
Our goal is to say 2 words.
the new students
Yes.
that just came in.
We have Logan Stats, and we have Leah Ladisor and Piper Reed.
Say the pledge.
Ready, guys?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
The Board of Education has a pen for you. I want to thank you for coming, and I know TJ does well.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Yeah.
This pen lights up. Thank you.
Hopefully.
Oh, they started lighting them. It's not worth the calories. They started lighting them.
That could be easily fixed, it should be.
It's a C item, I love that, like a C. D item.
We are going to move on to item number 4, which is the public hearing concerning the intent of the Board of Education of Community Consolidated School District 15 to sell 27,250,000 school fire prevention and safety bonds. Meeting will come to order. May I have the suggested motion, please?
I make a motion to open the public hearing concerning the intent of the Board of Education of Community Consolidated School District Number 15, Cook County, Illinois, to sell 27,250,000 school fire prevention and safety bonds.
Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Babcock?
Aye.
Chapman?
Aye.
Eckert?
Aye.
Khan?
Aye.
Morrison?
Aye.
Seifert?
Aye.
Gray?
Aye.
Mr. Damchuk.
Excited to move my chair so I can talk into the microphone. Good evening, President Babcock, Superintendent Thompson, fellow board members. Brief presentation to open up the public hearing on the proposed life safety bonds. I got to swipe the other way. $29,566,080 was submitted to the Illinois State Board of Education. The Illinois State Board of Ed approved $27,250,080, which means that $2.3 million was disallowed. Work still has to be done on the $2.3 million, but under the strict school code that they follow, that work cannot be funded with life safety bonds. So that's why those amounts were disallowed. Some possible negative financial factors that we look at that could possibly affect the district and the ability to pay for all the projects out of current fund reserves. Senate Bill 1, which is the funding formula change, we've talked about that over the last year here with the board. Annual revenue loss of approximately $9.6 million. I do understand from our Ed Red meeting last week that Senator Menard does intend on resubmitting that legislation for this year on Senate Bill 1. We don't know if it's going to change, but the last time we looked at it, revenue loss of the district, $9.6 million. State Superintendent's recommended budget for 2016-2017, which reallocates some special ed dollars into the general state aid formula, or GSA as we call it. Annual revenue loss of about $1.2 million. Property tax freeze is still being talked about in Springfield. There's still some bills out for that. Be effective for the 18 and 19 and 19-20 school years, at least the ones that have been most recently presented, which equates to about a $2 million revenue loss each year, which compounds every year, assuming that the CPI or the rate of inflation is about 2%. And still talking about the potential pension cost shift, which about 1% would cost the district about $800,000, and we've heard anywhere from 6 to 9%. This state is looking to gradually shift the cost down to the local districts over a period of time. And one point I don't have up there too is just the cash crunch at the state right now. The state, because they don't have a budget, and they did have, and the state is really spending about $33 million a day more now in expenditures than they do have in revenues. So it's only really probably a short matter of time before that cash crunch hits the state. And if we've all been reading the news, we know that state universities and colleges are really struggling. And our fear is that as they get to that cash crunch, that the state won't make all their mandated payments to school districts, either mandated categorical payments or general state aid payments. And if they don't make those, would we get them next year or not? We just don't know. So that's another big question mark that's out there as far as local factors. Funding options could pay for all of the items out of district funds, issue life safety bonds, or a combination of district funds and life safety funds. So the current calendar, as we talked tonight, the board is having a public hearing on the issuance of the bonds. February 22nd, rating agency meeting with Moody's, and a due diligence call, which is the same thing, that process that we went through before. When we issue bonds, we have to have the bonds rated by Moody's, either Moody's or Standard & Poor's. We had Moody's last time. If the board does decide to move forward, March 9, the board would approve a bond resolution for up to $19.5 million in life safety bonds, and delegate authority to the board president and a CSBO to approve the final sale. Price the bonds via a competitive sale week of March 14, and probably close around March 30. And they're tentative dates at this point. They're not carved in stone, but that's generally what we're looking at. Impact on real estate taxes, $250,000 home, about the additional $15.58 average over a 4-year period, per year over a 4-year period. It's not an absolute number. We won't know what that number actually is until we sell the bonds, and then our premium bonds and discount bonds. But it's not going to change much from $15 and $58. It may go up 10 or 15 cents one way or the other, but nonetheless, even with it's still looking at the percentage increase of less than 1% of the total tax bill on somebody that has a $250,000 house in District 15. And just to review our debt retirement schedule, where we've been. The district was, if you look in 2008, we had almost $7 million of debt retirement. That dropped down 9/10 to about 5.5. Then we did have the refunding a year ago, and then we brought our debt retirement payments down under $5 million, which is scheduled to go through 21, and then about $3 million through 2024. So as a district, we have been taking steps to cut down our interest expense that the district pays, which ultimately costs the taxpayers less. So we've done everything we can. It's a low interest rate environment right now for the issuance of bonds, because rates are still very, very low, and that's the environment we're in. And if there's any other questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Just a comment, but under better state circumstances than we've had today, we've had late payments by the state in the past, haven't we?
Yeah, you know what, we've had late payments almost every year that I've been here, because the states never got caught up on bills. In fact, one year, about 2 or 3 years ago, our state reimbursement, the final one came, I think it was in December. So the fiscal year ended June 30th, and we didn't get the final payment until 6 months later. So it's not uncommon for us to experience that.
But I also should mention that historically, the state has skipped a payment and not made it up, which we could face as well.
They've done that in the past as well, and I think there's a very real possibility with the state cash crunch that's going on right now that could very well happen again.
Any other questions from the board? Public comment. Is there anyone who would like to speak
Just on the resolution.
on this hearing? Yes. Okay.
Make a motion to adjourn the public
Yes.
hearing concerning the intent of the Board of Education of Community Consolidated School District 15, Cook County, Illinois, to sell $27,250,000 school fire prevention and safety bonds.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Kevin?
Aye.
Eckert?
Aye.
Hunt?
Aye.
Morrison? Aye.
Seifert?
Aye.
Green?
Aye.
Babcock? Aye. Moving on to our superintendent reports.
Okay, it's with great pleasure that we have 3 guests with us tonight that I wanted to, that I've invited so that we could recognize their service to the children in the district. We have 3 of the 5 main volunteers for Blessings in a Backpack, and you have a nice printout in your booklet that talks about all the things they've done and the commitment they've made to make sure that the children in our district, the ones that are most needy, have food for the weekend. Tonight we have Karen Kaz and Andy Friedman and Jan Southerton. Would you ladies please come up to the podium up here? Come on up, please. So, this is a program that's been going on for 2 years now, is it? Third year. And, please, face the crowd there. I want to see. So Blessings in a Backpack, these are 3 retired teachers that wanted to do something after they were serving kids in the classrooms. And they decided that there was a need in communities. And so they investigated this organization, Blessings in a Backpack, and they've been volunteering for 3 years to put food in backpacks so that the kids that go home that wouldn't have nutritious meals to eat over the weekend can take a backpack full of food home and they get to eat over the weekend. And so they have given a huge amount of time to do that, and I kind of call them our angels. They hardly are seen, they volunteer, but these kids, it's made a difference for 3 years in these kids' lives. And they've just started a new program at another one of our schools. So we have 3 schools where children are going home with food on the weekends that probably would have been struggling just to have things to eat. So want to thank you and know that there's a special place in heaven for you 3.
Thank you.
And
Good to hear.
would anyone like to say anything?
Well, and we want to recognize Bobby, too, the nutritionist in your district, because
Yeah, she's
we
been-
couldn't do it without her.
She's been very instrumental in helping us and guide us to do nice weekly menus for the children.
I'm not surprised about that either, but I'm glad that she's able to help you because what you do is really phenomenal. So we have a little gift for you. It's just a little reminder that we think about you periodically, even though we don't see you. It's a glass apple, so it's not really edible, but it reminds you of the 2 years. They have names on them, and the other 2 volunteers that weren't able to make it tonight, if you would give them to them
Sure,
as well.
we would be happy to. Thank
If
you.
we could have these angels come up by the board, we would love to at least shake your hands. Thank you so much.
Thanks. It was really great to get the positive publicity in the newspaper about the program. We don't always get the publicity that we have.
What a
We
difference.
really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.
I mean, it's terrific.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Jan, I'll see it. I'll see it sometime.
Thank you so much.
All right, the next item in my section is to recognize a couple teachers that have gone above and beyond, that have renewed their national board certification. I'm asked Lisa Nuss to come up and recognize those 2 teachers.
Thank you, Dr. Thompson. President Babcock, Dr. Thompson, members of the board, and guests. It's my pleasure tonight to be here to recognize 2 of our teachers. I'm going to ask Gina Van Wyck and Donna Morris to come up at this time. It really is my pleasure, I don't need this. It really is my pleasure to be here tonight next to these 2 women who have been colleagues of mine for 20 years, sorry to age all of us. And they are very dedicated to their school. We have Donna at Paddock, who's the RCS, and we have Gina, who's at Jane Addams in 6th grade. And What we're here tonight to celebrate is their National Board Certification Renewal. Now, a little bit about National Board. It's a process that's very time-intensive, labor-intensive, and it requires teachers to be reflective about their practice, look at what they do, how they do it, and how they can improve it. And the main goal is that we all know that the best impact to students is to have quality educators. And these two people who have been in our district for 20-plus years not only have been reflective for that time and went through this process once, but they have successfully renewed that certification. And I think that the best part of it is that they are not only models for their students, but they're models for other teachers, that really we are all lifetime learners. And it really is such an honor to have worked next to and with you for so many years. And we just want to thank you for all that you give to your students and your fellow teachers at your building. And we thank you for that, all that you do. So thank you very much.
Jen, you want to say anything?
Glad it's over.
And we don't have apples for you, we have a class of students waiting for you tomorrow morning.
No, but we do have above and beyond pins. We've probably only given out about 20 of these in the district because they're pretty unique, and you've definitely earned it. And so I hope you wear this proudly, and when we see it on you, we'll remember all the hard work that you put in. You went above and beyond what is normally expected. So thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, ladies.
Great. The last item I wanted to talk about in my section was just to give the board an update on the Facilities Plan Committee that met on the 20th of January. A group of about 20 of us met in the district offices, and it was a very encouraging, positive, productive meeting. It was a rich meeting of minds and creation of ideas, and then kind of creation of some plans. This group was made up of a diverse group of people. We had 2 board members, 3 administrators, and we had parents and community members from all walks and sides of the district. So we had the southwest corner, we had the southeast corner, the northeast corner, and the middle. We had everything covered, but from parent perspective, we had an architect there, we had an engineer, we had another architect. So we had a carryover from our first committee meeting. We had about 3 or 4 people that were on the previous committee, and then we had an influx of some new people, a teacher too. But the discussion revolved around what do we need to do as far as our facilities are concerned moving forward. They used the recommendations from the first Facilities Plan Committee that suggested there was more work to be done, and we started with what they suggested that we should do. And I just wanted to highlight some of the things that were listed. They generated some priorities. They said, we need to try and make sure that kids aren't on buses any longer than they need to be. We've got kids being transported sometimes up to 45 minutes. And so one of the goals, I think, and priorities of the committee is to lessen the time kids are on buses so they can be in school more and at home more. Another priority was they really think that full-day kindergarten is a necessity in our district. When 90% of the districts in the state have full-day kindergarten, we don't. We think we're kind of falling behind. So the committee thought that that was definitely a priority. They had some other ideas, moving to a 6, 7, 8 configuration of middle schools, whether we should have a preschool center. They thought that it was a priority that we assimilate our second language students into the regular population to make sure that there's a concerted effort that we bring those kids into our school like they're full-fledged students and integrate them as soon as possible. And then they talked about classrooms and what do we need for the 21st century? What do we need for the student population that we currently have, the population that we anticipate is going to be there? And then they talked about some aging facilities and whether they were worth investing dollars in. So it was really a great discussion, and we presented some information. I think I shared with the board before that we realized that in our 35 square mile school district, within 1 square mile in Northeast Palatine, we have 22% of our kids residing. 22% of our kids live in just 1 square mile of our 35 square mile district, and they attend at least 7 different schools, and there's no school in Northeast Palatine. And so this committee thought that it was worthy of investigating if we wanted to keep them off the bus as much as possible, and we want them to be as involved as possible. We needed to maybe consider the possibility of having a school in Northeast Palatine. It could really meet a need, particularly based upon the concept of the community school that is being operated now at Winston Junior High, where we're bringing a number of services into the school so that they're there for the kids and the parents, so they don't have to travel to multiple locations to get these services. So the committee thought that that was something that should be investigated. They thought that there should be some early intervention and ECDIC programs that could be expanded and maybe find a permanent home found for them. They said we need to look at our current facilities to make sure that we can move forward with the meeting the needs of the kids in the future. So they've asked us for some information at our next meeting, which is going to be on the 22nd of this month, I believe. And the administration is going to get them information early. They're going to look at it, and then when we come together on the 22nd, I think we'll have some really rich conversations about, with all the information you have now, how should we start planning to move forward and make recommendations to the board. Dr. Chapman, did you?
No, I think that's a good summary.
Okay.
Very good summary.
Dr. Eckberg?
And we have Drs. Eckberg and Chapman sitting on that facilities committee as well.
Yeah, so I was very encouraged by a wonderful group of people, very committed, level-headed, reasonable, and I think they're very committed to the community as well. So I'm excited about that, and I'll bring the report from the next meeting at the March meeting.
I would just add one thing, not what your summary is excellent, but the thing that impressed me the most is that everybody that was at that meeting provided input to the group. It was a good selection of representation.
Yeah, great, thank you. So that's it for me.
Okay, moving on to reading and acceptance of the minutes. May I have the suggested motion, please?
I make a motion to approve the minutes from the following meeting of the Board of Education, January 13th, 2016, regular Board of Education meeting as presented.
Second.
Discussion?
I did make one very small change. I changed for to far as a board member corrected, so that's just a minor change in the minutes.
So as amended, that huge amendment, right? Okay. Roll call, please.
Eckberg?
Aye.
Khan?
Aye.
Morrison? Abstain. Seifert?
Aye.
Grant?
Aye.
Babcock?
Aye.
Chapman?
Aye.
Motion carries. Before we move on to board discussion and reports, if there are any other citizens in the board that would like, we have two requests that are interested in addressing the board, please fill out the green sheets that were in the vestibule as you came in and get those to our secretary, and that will be coming up shortly. Moving on to item 16-210, Ed Red Council legislation. Dr. Chapman.
Well, we can report that we still have no budget at the state level, and it doesn't appear there's any compromise. There was some speculation that maybe we'd move forward in February, but that does not seem to be the case. And I think Mike did a good job of indicating the issues that are before us as they relate to education. I would also add, though, that there are a number of human service organizations for which funding has not been provided that are either lessening their services or are basically closing the door. And that agency in our community that services District 15 students is the Bridge Youth and Family Services, and they're weighing the issue of the same thing. They're going to reach a point where they simply can't reach payroll, which means, again, it's unfortunate for our community and unfortunate for the students that they serve. But
And for District 15, sure.
And then, that's in addition to the financial issues that we're going to face too. So it's not just education, but the unfortunate part that kids, both in terms of their human services needs and their education, are going to be suffering because of this lack of movement.
Well, let's hope that President Obama had some impact today with his speech. We'll see.
We'll see. Maybe also just add that the governor did give a State of the Union, or State of the State address, And one of the things that he did say is that his goal is to significantly increase state support of education, which flies counter to what we've heard in terms of those issues that have been presented as it relates now, whether or not that happens or not. Again, I don't think we can hold our breath on that. So, but another thing I was impressed with is that he gave a significant amount of time to his concern about two issues. One is early childhood education, which is, again, I think something that might help us if it comes to funding, particularly for our all-day kindergarten program. And then more flexibility when it comes to bargaining, and again, that remains to be seen.
Okay, thank you very much. Item 16-211, District 15 Educational Foundation, Mr. Seifert.
Not a real lot to report on the foundation. They're doing some reorganizing and rebranding of the District 15 Foundation, which is rolling out now, but no real events or anything going on right now. We'll have a little bit more at the next meeting.
Okay. Item 16-212, First Reading Board of Education Policy. Dr. Barbini.
Good evening, Dr. Thompson, President Babcock, and members of the Board of Education. It's good to be here this evening with you. The first policy that the administration is recommending deals with student admissions and student transfers. It basically resides within a concept known as early entrance to kindergarten. Currently, the state of Illinois, through the Illinois School Code, has some hard and fast rules in terms of when kindergarten students need to be admitted to public school districts, and that's when their 5th birthday falls on or before September 1 of the school term that they would like to enroll their student in. There is optional language that currently exists in our policy for the kindergarten early entrance component for kids whose 5th birthday falls after September 1 and before November 1st. So these are students slightly younger, all right, than their counterparts who turn 5 on or before September 1. What district administration, after review over the course of the last 4 years, is recommending is that we eliminate that optional language, allowing for consideration for kids who are younger and fall outside of the legal requirement for entrance into kindergarten, because as we've examined our practices, and the expectations are quite high for kids who are younger developmentally to enter into kindergarten. Our assessment process that we've currently used measures students' readiness in terms of kindergarten at any number of levels: literacy, mathematics, the ability for socialization, fine motor skills, including an IQ test, etc. What we found is that out of the 25 families who've made the request for us to consider this optional requirement, only 1 of 25 students has actually qualified for the very high standard of kindergarten early entrance. And this is a very time-consuming test, and it also is at an expense for our families of $300 per assessment. And because of the track record, such the high level of requirement or criteria for kids to enter into kindergarten early, as well as the fact that we've only had 1 student out of 25 in the past 4 years actually qualify, we really feel that given that this is truly a relationship business, in terms of building relationships with students and their families, that what we're doing by allowing the language to continue in this optional practice is we're actually setting up some adversarial relationships that are unintended with families, because many times this is the first interaction that families have with our district and with our staff and our building principals, and more so often than not, they're not qualifying for this after some time and after cost to parents. And so it's optional. And after review, not only at the cabinet level, but then also speaking briefly with our principals on this matter at the elementary level, it's the administration's recommendation that we strike or remove this optional language and opportunity that currently exists. Many districts are moving toward this path as well, so it's not just District 15. So that's our administrative recommendation for the first policy.
Any questions?
And that doesn't preclude a parent from placing them in a private school with a certified by the Illinois State Board of Education kindergarten teacher. If they would pass that private school year of kindergarten, then you would be obligated to place them in first grade. the following year. That's an option for the parents.
That is an option, and we have a process that exists within this policy and administrative procedures that governs that as well.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Okay, the second policy that we're advancing for first reading deals with student-athlete concussions and head injuries. This is receiving not just local but national attention as we're learning more and more, about what the long-term effects are of head trauma, whether it's minor or if it's significant. I mean, it is significant. And there was recent legislation passed, otherwise known as the Youth Sports Concussion Safety Act, that requires all public school districts by 16-17 to pretty much overhaul their policy language and procedures in this area. It requires public school boards to appoint or approve members of a concussion oversight team for the district. What this team basically is responsible for doing is developing procedures in the area of return to learn after a head injury, return to play, professional development opportunities, as well as who's required to receive training in terms of signs and symptoms of concussion so that we can respond to students who may have suffered head trauma in this area. So the language for first reading, which is presented before you this evening, basically aligns to that new legal requirement. The committee has been formed and is beginning work in terms of this important area even before the language has been presented to you. And I do have to say that we are definitely in good hands due to the fact that the board's very own Dr. Eckberg is on the concussion oversight team for the district.
Dr. Eckberg approached me and he said, is there some reason why this is just focused on athletes? Shouldn't any student that gets a head injury in PE or anywhere else in school have the same kind of treatment and have to go through the same kind of exercises to be readmitted back into the class and into a physical education setting? Would you check with Sue Gehring and see if that's going to be a procedure we're going to follow, even though this policy is directed only at student athletes, to make sure that we think that probably should be a process that's used for everybody?
If you ask, I shall answer. No problem, Dr. Thompson. We'll look into that.
I think when we met as a committee, because when this legislation was passed, the implication was that it was going to take effect this year, and the school year had already started, but then it's hard to believe the legislature woke up and they decided that they were going to implement it next year since they had just brought all this forward at the beginning of the school year. And when we discussed in our committee meeting, the thought was playground injury, gym class injury, athletic participation injury were all going to be treated the same way. That's why we bring up the student athlete. It's probably just student.
Right.
One other. Under Part C, it indicates that the students, parents, and guardians would be required to sign a concussion information receipt before participating in an interscholastic athletic activity. Why wouldn't we have that for example, what reminded me of that, we saw that activity that was a school-sponsored activity that was gone on the last 2 days, which was
The two-ball.
involved. Yeah, think about all the athletes there. It seemed to me it should be, again, I agree with Jim, I think it should be broader than interscholastic. Can you look at that as well?
Yes. That's good.
Yeah, so I'll talk to Assistant Superintendent Gehring, and we'll make sure that the committee, reviews this and then provides me with some additional language that provides clarity and broadens the scope of this very important policy.
The bottom line is the more students we're protected with.
Yes.
Thanks, Dr. Berman.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to citizens to address the board, public comments. We are going to open the meeting now for public comment. Please remember, this is not a dialogue between you and the board. If you have a specific issue which requires a response, Superintendent Thompson will get back to you. Please state your name and identify any group that you represent, and please limit your remarks to no more than 5 minutes. We have 2 requests this evening. Teresa Grainig?
Yes.
Come on up, Teresa.
Come on up.
My apologies, I do have a document for each of you. I had computer glitches for getting it sent to you in advance.
Please
Is it appropriate for me to hand this to you now, or should I wait?
Sure.
And I apologize.
Not a problem. I'll pass it out and you can.
So, good evening. My name is Teresa Greinig, and I represent a parent advocate group for Lincoln's current first grade class, the 112 students that attend there at Lincoln. We've presented you with just a letter of some concerns that we have with the large class of first grade. And like I said, I'm here today as an advocate for those Lincoln Elementary School's 112 first grade students. To begin with, we feel we would be remiss not to express an appreciation for the efforts of Mrs. Knuppel and the first grade team at Lincoln. They're amazing and dedicated and passionate. They consistently go above and beyond for all of the students within the school. On January 15th, a group of 12 parents from Lincoln School met with Principal Knuppel and Assistant Principal Kroll, as well as Deputy Superintendent Dr. Barbini. During this meeting, we expressed our concerns regarding the large class size of the current first grade. We're confident that Dr. Barbini will, if he has not already, express to you those concerns that were addressed at the meeting at that time. However, as a group of parents advocating for our students, we wanted to make sure that we brought this issue to your attention ourselves and that we were on the record with the board. Many of our concerns addressed at this meeting were, as you'll see in your paper, due to safety. Large number of students in every classroom creates organizational challenges in the case of an emergency, as well as just in daily supervision. Some of these kids are very young. Scissors become dangerous in the classroom. High student to teacher ratios do not facilitate the best student learning. Testing obviously begins in third grade. We want our students to perform their best by having the best foundation possible. And this cannot happen without more individualized attention and small group teaching. And we realize as well that our schools rely on these good test scores. All of our students learn very differently. Many of our students are not receiving the individualized attention that they need to be well-rounded, as well as well-supported academically and emotionally. Space restrictions in the classrooms themselves, students have limited ability to move around. Even in my son's classroom, scooting his chair back to get a pencil, you can very easily bump into other students, causing disruptions in the class. Parents address the issue of noise level, that even in a very controlled classroom, so many students moving around create too much noise and that students can't focus. We want our students to develop a love of learning and obviously a sense of place and belonging in our schools. With these overly large class size, our students are in danger of simply just going through the motions to get a task done and not really finding their place within the school themselves and getting lost. We want our students to develop this love for learning, as well as equality. According to Dr. Barbini's September 9th, 2015 student enrollment update, the student-to-teacher ratio for the current 2015-16 first grade class is disappropriate to that of other schools in our district. Lincoln's first graders experienced one of the highest class sizes in the entire district. We would like our class sizes to be consistent. Our current first grade class was very large the previous year in kindergarten. Of course, this resulted in a disappropriate class size as well. No sustainable adjustment, was made to accommodate for the current 2015-2016 school year. So as a result, the class sizes are inappropriately large again. This cannot happen next year. Many of our students at Lincoln come from families who have a lower socioeconomic status, and Lincoln has one of the highest percentage of this, and that additional class size adds stressors to those families as well. Obviously, Palatine is a growing community. We do amazing with the resources that we have, but we cannot continue trying to do more. As we've all just discussed, we're going to be receiving less. As parents and guardians for the 112 students at Lincoln, our expectation is that our students will be treated the same as every other class at this level within the district. We appreciate the efforts made by Principal Knuppel and the first grade team to improve the learning environment by adding an additional first grade section in the afternoon. However, this is not an ideal situation, and it is certainly not sustainable. Therefore, we ask that at the beginning of the 2016-2017 school year, the individual class size of Lincoln's soon-to-be second graders be reduced by adding a fifth section of second grade. This would allow our students to learn and grow in class sizes that are more consistent with the expectations already set by our district and by our state. We're aware that the facilities, plan committee is beginning to explore how to best address 21st century learning. In our current situation, this high student to teacher ratio limits this learning. As proud families of Lincoln and advocates for our students, we're hopeful and respectfully insist that this issue is addressed by the board. With that, we want to thank you for all you do for all of the students and all of the schools in our district. It's a large task. Thank you for hearing us today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Moving on to Rob Barton.
Good evening, President Babcock, Superintendent Thompson, and members of the board. I'm Rob Barton. I'm sure many of you have lost a child in a shopping center or at a park. Remember the feeling of dread and helplessness that you had. Now imagine losing your child and not knowing about it for 2 hours. That's what I had to go through on September 8th, 2015. I arrived to pick up my son, who attends Winston Elementary as a first grader at CARE, and no one could find him. I didn't know where he was, who had him, or what was going on through his mind. I couldn't imagine him being wise enough, being a 6-year-old, to stay in one place while his parents or neighbors were nowhere in sight. As I arrived home, I saw my son hiding behind a bush with tears streaming from his face. I was so upset yet still happy that my son was smart enough not to wander off. After this incident, we were told that this would never happen again due to new safeguards put in place. However, last Thursday, we received a phone call from the CARE program that our son did not show up. We found out that he got on the bus to go home while both of us were at work. Thankfully, we were alerted much earlier this time and were able to contact our neighbor. She had found him walking around our driveway looking for us. My wife left work early to pick him up and take him home. Our son goes to the CARE program on Tuesdays and Thursdays and takes the bus home Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. It's pretty easy to understand how a 6-year-old could forget where to go on certain days. What's not easy to understand is how someone from the school can't be there to make sure kids get to the right place on the right days. I came here to plead with you to review your safety policies. However, this week I've spoken with Superintendent Scott Thompson, and from that conversation, it sounds like the right steps have been taken to ensure that this does not happen again, and I thank you and President Babcock for speaking about that. I'm a high school teacher, and we take our safety procedures extremely seriously. I know as a teacher that many parents trust me with their child. Safety should be the last thing I have to worry about when my son is attending Winston campus. We come here tonight to urge you to follow through with these new practices that have been put in place so this never happens again to our son or any student that attends District 15. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you. I know that all of you got the Barton's letter, and I know that many of you were really troubled by the fact that that Trenton was not where he's supposed to be and was not taken care of. And we have taken several steps that Mr. Barton talked about to make sure that it doesn't happen at Winston, and we're going to implement this throughout the district as well. So we've got we have a program now where we got care buddies, where we buddy up students so that they go to care together with their friends, and so that's a nice way to kind of help them get there. Our care teachers are coming down to get kindergartners and first graders from their classrooms so they don't have to walk, and they get them before they actually leave the classroom. We also have some visuals on the wall for the kids. So we're going to have visuals that show this particular student, this is where you ride the bus on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, on Tuesday, you go to care. And so we've got a visual there for both the teacher to be organized and for the student to look at. And each day before the teacher lets the kids leave, walks them to the bus, she looks at that chart, and the kids look at the chart and make sure they know where they're going. The other thing is that we've made sure that all the secretaries have appropriately coded all of the students into our computer system so that the bus drivers have that printout of which kids are supposed to be on the bus on which days. And so those are things we've implemented now at Winston, and we will do that at all the rest of the elementaries so that we can hopefully avoid this from ever happening again, because I'm a parent, a grandparent, and I know it would have been very traumatic, and I was very sad that it occurred, and we want to make sure that doesn't happen again. Thank you.
And Mr. and Mrs. Barton, we are really sorry for the fear and the angst that must have caused, for sure. And hopefully this has been taken very seriously and being addressed. So thank you. Thank you for coming tonight. Okay. Moving on to our action items. Item 16-220, the personnel report. May I have the suggested motion, please?
I make a motion to approve the February 10, 2016 personnel report as presented.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call.
Khan,
Aye.
Morrison,
Aye.
Seifert,
Aye.
Gurian,
Aye.
Babcock,
Aye.
Chapman,
Aye.
Eckert.
Aye.
Motion passes. Moving on to item 16-221, approval of budget guidelines. May I have the suggested motion, please?
I make a motion to approve the budget guidelines for 2016-17 as presented.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call.
Morrison,
Aye.
Seifert,
Aye.
Gurian,
Aye.
Babcock,
Aye.
Chapman,
Aye.
Eckert,
Aye.
Khan.
Aye.
Motion passes. Item 16-222, bid award 2016 Summer Life Safety Projects. Mr. Gurion, may I have the suggested motion, please?
Well, yes, you may. I make a motion to award the contracts for the Life Safety Project bids 16-005 to the 15 companies listed for a total bid award of $11,791,825.50, of which $10,930,625.50 will be an expenditure of the 2016-17 Fire Prevention and Safety Fund, and $861,200 will be an expenditure of 2016-17 capital project funds.
Second.
Discussion?
I'd just like to thank Mr. Lim for all the effort he put into the bidding process to get us a good price. Thank you.
And then his work begins.
Yes, yes. May we have a successful summer, for sure. Any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Seifert,
Aye.
Gurian,
Aye.
Babcock,
Aye.
Chapman, Eckert,
Aye.
Khan,
Aye.
Morrison.
Aye. Motion carries. Moving on to item 16-223, the bid award for parking lot improvements. May I have the suggested motion, please?
I make a motion to award the contract for the parking lot improvements bid 16-006 to Orange Crush LLC, Hillside, Illinois, for a total bid award amount of $175,888 as recommended.
Second.
Discussion?
This is the parking lot at Winston. Is this the one that's off of Palatine Road? Is that the one that you're addressing?
That's correct. It's on Park
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Gurian,
Aye.
Babcock,
Aye.
Chapman,
Aye.
Eckert,
Aye.
Khan,
Aye.
Morrison,
Aye.
Seifert.
Aye.
Motion carries. Item 16-224, bid award direct diversion of USDA cheese, barrel cheese, natural American. May I have the suggested motion, please?
I make a motion to award the contract for the direct diversion of USDA cheese 110242 barrel cheese, natural American bid 16-007 to Land O'Lakes, Arden Hills, Minnesota, for a total bid amount of $72,329.70 as recommended.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call.
Babcock,
Aye.
Chapman,
Aye.
Eckert,
Aye.
Khan,
Aye.
Morrison,
Aye.
Seifert,
Aye.
Gurian.
Aye.
Motion carries. Item 16-225, bid award asbestos abatement. May I have the suggested motion, please?
I make a motion to award the contract for the asbestos abatement bid 16-008 to Kinsale Contracting, Westmont, Illinois, for a total bid award amount of $58,900 as recommended.
Second. Discussion? Roll call.
Chapman?
Aye.
Eckert?
Aye.
Con?
Aye.
Morrison? Aye. Seifert?
Aye.
Gurian?
Aye.
Babcock?
Aye. Motion carries. Item 16-230, the consent calendar. Does any board member wish to remove anything from the consent calendar? There being none, may I have the suggested motion, please?
I make a motion to approve the consent calendar as presented.
Roll call, please.
Second.
I don't think I need a second. Oh, yes, we do. I just don't need to talk about it, do I? I'll get it right yet. Okay,
I seconded it anyway.
there you go. Roll call, please.
Eckert?
Aye.
Con?
Aye.
Morrison? Aye. Seifert?
Aye.
Gurian?
Aye.
Babcock?
Aye.
Chapman?
Aye.
Motion carries. Correspondence.
Yes, we had one Freedom of Information request and response in the last period. On January 11th, 2016, a request was received from Trey Cobb, One Chance, Illinois, Chicago, Illinois. The response to this request was sent on January 15th, 2016. We received one check from the Village of Palatine in impact fees in the amount of $7,465.26.
May I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are